So welcome everybody. This event is officially headed for the CITYX Venice Italian Virtual Pavilion at the 18th Venice Architecture Biennale, but it will be uploaded to their website. They are a virtual pavilion. But that was the invitation that launched this event. It concerns the archive, which we will touch on, but it concerns the abolition of intellectual property foremost. I would like to thank Ava and the graduate school at ZRC SAZU for sponsoring this event. I'm a student at SAZU and I've just turned my thesis in today, which is about this problem of intellectual property. So this is a big day. It's also Michaelmas and an Aries full moon, which makes it even a bigger day. So we'll start with this concept of the elective abolition of intellectual property, because there's no way in hell that the authorities are ever going to abolish intellectual property. There's too much money involved. But we can do it as artists and as scholars, and that's the point of this debate with Luka and with you, and the question of why would we want to do that? The primary reason for me is that intellectual property rights resembles slavery. And as you know, slavery was abolished slowly. It did not happen all at once. And in Russia in the 1800s, it was the enlightened nobles like Tolstoy who freed their slaves first. And then those freed slaves lived on the estates of the enlightened nobility because they had nowhere to go. But it's a very similar problem. You give up intellectual property rights, and where the hell do you go with your work? How do you audition your work? How do you protect your work from being stolen? Because it's not just giving it away. Giving up your intellectual property rights paradoxically involves protecting them. Now, because the CITYX Venice Italian Virtual Pavilion made this call based on the concept of the archive, and what does the archive represent, I immediately thought of the idea that buried in the archive is perhaps the promise of various things, but they're not actually there. It's just an intimation. So this question, which comes from Holderlin, a paraphrase of Holderlin, who wrote, "Is there a measure for justice on earth?" in the years when he was considered mad, by the way. This question that I'm asking, is there a measure of justice buried in the archive, has to be answered definitively, no. But if there's an intimation there, then we have something. Now Luka, being a Derridian, I hope you don't mind, knows the archive upside down and backwards, because Derrida was obsessed with the archive. There's a great book of his called Archive Fever. So Luka, please, enlighten us as to what is in the archive and what is not in the archive.
Thank you, Gavin. It's an honor to be here with part of your project, and I would also like to join all the praise to the supporters of your projects that you do. And yeah, we have to return to the question of archive and maybe even the question of justice. Yeah? How can justice be anywhere? How can be enclosed? How can be captured? And the philosophy dealt with this question, even Kant with this, Kant put it as a regulative ideal. Yeah? So we can just come closely to it, but never really encapsulate, never really achieve it. So justice in itself cannot be captured. Can be, but can an idea be captured? It's the same thing, but the archive we surely won't talk about them in positivist manner as some strict collection of, let it be papers or other captured traces and so on, but this is the boring type of archive and there is nothing in there. Yeah? It's really just an old paper, but if we want to go on and put the archive to the test, yeah, you have to take it, let's call it hermeneutically, as a place when the spirit dwells in a way. Yeah? So it's an in this, let's call it messianic perception of archive, sure, there ghost can also dwell. Yeah? So I wouldn't say that there is justice as such, but the quest or the thirst or the drive for justice, the hope for justice, well, this could be present surely as a trace. Yeah, never really. If you look through the archives, you'll never find concrete examples of justice, but quest to be just, maybe. Yeah.
What do you think Holderlin meant by measure? Is there a measure?
Yeah, this is. We can translate it also in other languages. Probably the Greek word canon can be also here. Yeah? So, and therefore you're completely right to put it with the archival logic, with canonization, with these regulative ideals. And he probably thought that, or dreamed of, yeah, of something that is objective in a way. Yeah? That is at least tries to be objective.
Could we use the word true?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, this is
synonyms of that kind.
Has to be. It's really measure, golden measure. Yeah, it's really the proximity, the nearest proximity of the truth. It's where the tradition lies. When it's really embodiment. Yeah, it's inscription. It's so. Yeah, I think that measure had to be understand here, like you said, as something moment of truth. Yeah.
So if we think of the archive as a type of commons or public domain or any other synonym you might like to use, do you think there's an intimation there of the abolition of copyright? Because the archive as a commons or the public domain contains an immense amount of what's called prior art, which is everything you cannot claim. So when you do copyright or patent law, you have to prove that you haven't stolen something before you can copyright or patent something. And the weird analogy right now is with artificial intelligence, which at this point in case law in the US, everything going into the machine, AI, is fair use. That's an old copyright term where you're permitted to use it. And everybody's screaming and yelling that they don't want their stuff eaten up by this bloody, awful machine that's coming. But so far, the Copyright Office in the US has said, no, that's fair use. But the weirdest thing of all is that everything that comes out of the machine cannot be copyrighted, according to the Copyright Office of the US Department of whatever it is that they're in charge of. So it would almost seem like this paradox of artificial intelligence has just revealed the elephant in the room. The copyright is a pile of bullshit. 500 to 600 years worth of bullshit and not worth a goddamn.
Yeah, you have to agree with this. Yeah, it's clearly seen. Not just sure. I agree. It was revealed. It's become even more obvious than ever. Yeah, that just this proliferation of the traces is now. Benjamin saw this when the mechanical reproduction of art. So this is 100 years ago. No, so it's not. But now it's here for everyone to see that this property or what's proper to who owns, yeah, who owns the idea, the concept, the image. These are all useless, and not just useless, but really impossible terms now, because you know we have a really ethical dilemma, and I wasn't satisfied because they said that AI that's inside the house, yeah, can so they are trying to distinguish between different AIs, but this is really not impossible because they are not topological concepts anymore. So they are in clouds and so on. Yeah. So it's really everything is diluted now, and I would agree, yeah, that there is no obvious way to contain it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So if we needed a hook to hang our hat on,
yeah,
it would be this, ideational Franciscanism. As we go back to the beginnings of the Franciscan dispensation, if you like, St. Francis's days, before the church took over the order, Francis was gone and they piled shit on top of shit. St. Francis gave up all ownership of anything. He wouldn't touch money, and he refused property. And he wandered around. And this idea of itinerancy, poverty, and works is actually a methodology for doing scholarship. I've been following it for almost 10 years. And I don't mean literal poverty, I mean relative poverty. You put yourself out on a limb with a saw, you cut the limb off and you fall somewhere and you see what happens. Works regards the types of works you might produce under the auspices of wandering around, relative poverty, and this, which is the miraculous summation of Franciscanism, the right to have no rights. And this is not me, this is Agamben and others summarizing what Francis of Assisi did in those days before he was gone and before the church took over the order and basically ruined it, commodified it, if you like. So that is like the keystone, if you like, to this agenda of the elective abolition. Again, it has to be a choice. You have the right to refuse. But when you refuse, the miracle, if you like, is that you get other rights that you can't have as long as you're clinging on to materialistic, careerist, bombastic stuff.
Yeah, surely. And you're taking a spiritual tradition, you have to introduce the question of the sacred, the holy. Of course, it was often equated with the lowliness, the giving away, with kenosis, whatever. Yeah, it's really often ascribed as this. And now the question comes: yeah, how to archivize this giving away? So
yes.
How can this be? You can surely, as you well put it, be economized. Yeah? How can we probably earn something, yeah, with someone else's giving away? So it's who will pick it up, and then I know you're really deeply researched this history of Francis, and even more interestingly, what happened after his death. Yeah? He really the urge to keep hold of something, yeah, was so severe that there was nothing sacred, yeah, in any sense. Even bodily remains were excavated. Yeah, you told
yes,
those stories.
Many times they dug him up and counted his bones.
So it's really, you have to see it as a drive, as something so fundamental, this archival drive to keep something, to preserve something, and if not this story about the history of Franciscan order, any other order, shows us how impossible it is when it really...
but you see what the metaphor here is. It's not even a metaphor, it's more of an analogy, which is that you have to, in order to do this, give up your rights so you have other rights, you have to protect your works. You can't just hand them over to the cloud. You cannot just indulge in the now debauched common Creative Commons licenses, the open access movement has been corrupted. You cannot actually participate in those things. So you have to create a new ecosystem. And then you have to protect those works and that ecosystem from being recapitalized, which is one of the most difficult things about what we're talking about. And we will reach a point in a moment where we talk about the addition of one, which is a massive reduction in the production or dissemination of works when you step outside copyright law and renounce your rights. But before you even get there, you have to do something else. You have to transfer the moral rights, which you cannot give up by law. Under copyright law, you cannot give up your moral rights. You can give up everything else. CC0 license means no rights, but you still cannot give up your moral rights. So in order to get where we need to go, you have to be able to transfer your moral rights to your work, so that whatever you're producing, the artwork, the written work, whatever it is, has the rights that you used to have. And then, as a shepherd, you have to protect those works. So we will arrive there in a moment, but first we have to go through this step, which is a reference again to prior art. which is there's an immense amount of material that is included in any new work. And how can you possibly claim ownership of it, right? I mean, this is the fundamental flaw in the whole operation of copyright. Yes, you give credit to the author that you've appropriated, you hide some references because you have this anxiety about being discovered, about who influenced you, right? Or you very proudly trot out your influences, but that's not really what I'm describing. What I'm describing is this vast archive, which is drawn upon, like AI is now doing, except they're stealing everything and trying to commodify it, but they're probably going to be stopped from commodifying it. If the law goes the way it looks like it's going to go, they're not going to be able to sell it. They're going to have to find a new way to monetize it. But anyway, this immense archive that's drawn upon makes copyright an immense shambles. Two, that archive is the debt that cannot be repaid. And this again refers to Francis of Assisi. Yeah. This was something that he would tell people. He would honor in everything he did. He would say, there is a debt I cannot repay, so how can I possibly claim ownership of anything? No, I don't want to touch money because it's evil in his mindset. It was the source of contamination. It was the representation of mammon, right, of capital. And the weird thing is that in that period of time, capitalism was emerging at the same time that Francis was emerging. Modernity was emerging. We have this car crash of all these new influences. Plus, there was apocalyptic fervor in this 1200s period. So we had this gigantic something going on where the first opportunities to renounce it or denounce it were swept under the carpet, and they've been under the carpet ever since.
Yeah, and it shows in a way that these archives are just an illusionary attempt to begin with, just to search for this really primal, archival, this the first thing, the originary. This is never so simple. And really looking at the world of art is really the easiest to see that the originals are not interesting or are even not originary as they should be. And second, that even the concept itself of origin as something pure, something uncontained or uncontaminated, or something that is even available, approachable, and so on. Yeah? So it's really, and then if we have this original, let's say, presupposition, then we have to forge. Yeah? It's really the place to forge, and forgeries are probably more prevalent in archives than the originals in a way, yeah? Because originals are not attainable, and even more. Yeah, we want to see. It's this dual logic of the archive, yeah, that is well known, yeah, from even Greek term. Yeah, we have arche in a way means something that is really the first. It's the chronologically, let's say, but also that's something that governs. Yeah, it's so all the time we have not just the priority, but also this law giving. Yeah, it's the archives are ruling themselves with their composition and so on. So this is impossible cohabitation of those two principles, in my opinion. Yeah, they even temporarily they do not fit. Yeah, and therefore, yeah, where we can see if we return even to the prior argumentation, yeah, the thought or this I would say a scandal of Francis, yeah, that it's really giving it away, not to preserve it, not to hold it for better use for another times. Yeah, so it's really I would say ontological stance. Yeah, not to search for the the most proper, pristine, the most typical, the most, but really it's the opposite direction of this we called it drive. Yeah.
So let's situate this whole argument for a moment for our audience here today and for the CITYX virtual pavilion eventually. This argument is being made broadly at the moment, but in order to accomplish it, it has to be done within a very restricted category, which I have decided to call literary artistic scholarship, for a very specific reason, because I want artistic qualities and literary qualities and scholarship to merge, and I wish for all of those pursuits, which are inviolable and profoundly useful in the most useless way, if you like, to be protected against what's coming, which is chaos. I do believe that AI will create chaos in terms of intellectual property. So the key moment, as I pointed out earlier, is this. I don't know how this is going to be done yet, but this is the miracle that has not happened yet. As I pointed out, CC0 license, the last Creative Commons license, is no rights, but you can't get rid of your moral rights. The great irony is that nobody observes moral rights anyway. Publishers don't have a goddamn clue about what moral rights are, and they mistreat them all the time. And every country that's signed the Berne Convention for the Protection of Literary and Artistic Properties more or less writes their own versions of the protection of moral rights. And most of the times, especially in the US, you just don't have any. But they still exist as a kind of symbolic gesture from the history of copyright. So let's take that symbolic gesture and bring it back to life and hand it over to the work itself. So the literary, artistic scholarship, whatever that is, for you, for me, is the place to experiment with this transfer of the moral rights to works. How can it be done? Well, it's all about how you edition the works. Again, you have to protect them. You step outside copyright, there's people waiting to pounce. So we have been discussing this for several weeks now, and we came up with this. Now you think it's mythic. I think it's mythic as well, but I also think it's realizable. The, shall we call it, the notorious edition of one, right? Yeah. Where this is a starting point. So it's also, as I pointed out, a reduction, where you just take this propensity of scholars to throw their work everywhere, give it to Springer, give it to Routledge, and then have them put it behind a paywall or charge you money to publish it open access. All this nonsense goes away, because now we have an edition of one, and it starts as a single copy if you're a scholar and you're writing, or it's a work of art. Same thing. Works of art has almost always been single copies, but again, that's a huge argument in itself. So the edition of one, as I'm a scholar who writes, have published 8 books. Next book is going to be an edition of one. I've vowed to do that. It will be a single copy. It will be beautifully printed at the printer. It won't be run off on a Xerox machine. It will be beautifully bound, and then it will be given to a library. And it will be editioned in the library with an agreement that it shall never be scanned. It shall not leave the library. You see what I'm doing? I'm sort of protecting it from all the obvious dangers. And it will sit there, and if you want to read it, and in my case, nobody's going to go to the library to read my edition of one, but this is a gesture of, what, goodwill, if you like, towards this idea of giving the work the moral rights. I think this almost accomplishes it. What do you think?
Well, it's, in a way, we established this metaphysics of author, that it's really something that it has to be overcome. Yeah? And really the oneness of author can be only fought with the oneness of work, in a way. Yeah? So it's really putting the metaphysics back into the work, and the agency is there now. Where to search? Let's call it truth, or anything you want, yeah, or the measure. It's put back into the work. So I can support you here. I don't really see yet the effectiveness. Yeah, it's really just let's say, a quiet prayer, yeah, in a way.
It is.
And it's really praising itself with being the quietest of prayers. Yeah, it's really the voice is low here. Yeah, and
But is it absurd? Do you think it's absurd?
no, it's not absurd.
It's
Why
not
would
absurd.
it be? It might seem absurd if we look it from the perspective of gaining the widest audience or even gaining some income from it. Yeah, then this. But even as the work or world of art showed, yeah, it's really could be an allure of the fact that it's limited, that it's condensed, that it's scarce, yeah, that it's unapproachable. So all those things which would be in a way in this capitalistic society should work against, yeah, but they can also work for the allure of the work itself. So I don't see it as absurd.
Okay, so then we have also talked about this,
Yeah.
which is, as I pointed out, Creative Commons 0, CC0 license, the last license, the frontier, if you like, for Creative Commons, which is a very profoundly useful system up to a point, created by Lawrence Lessig and Aaron Schwartz, for the most part, and others. CC0 is called no rights, but then there's the problem of the moral rights. And so this next step has to be that. And this is not even a word anymore. This is an image. This is a lexical image, a conceptual something that cancels CC0 and goes to the next step. Any addition of one will have to be done under this, whatever this is. Is this even a category in your estimation?
Well, it's crossed out. Yeah, it's really exists still, but it's not even. It's double negation in a way. Yeah, so it's negation, but of negation, but still, yeah, it's readable just enough. Yeah,
just legible.
Just
yeah?
legible. And,
just legible.
And as such, yeah, it's really it corresponds to this work of one in a way, yeah, the addition of one. It's really, it's just if you want to look for it, you will find it. Yeah, it's scratched off. Yeah, it's being under the erasure and so on, but still, and it shows the appropriateness of the not crossed out rights. Yeah, it's really the rights as such are perverse now. Yeah, this C in the circle. Yeah, it's the perverse thing to do now, and it's really the highest metaphysical guardian of something that is unattainable. So I would see this crossed out rights as more appropriate use of the term.
So then, this is maybe the big one.
Yeah.
The addition of one under the status of whatever that is can only be released by this author. If you put your name on it.
Sure. Yeah. It's less than pseudonym. Yeah? It's really, but it's more than empty space. Yeah, again, it's not anonymous as such. Yeah, because if you look at the archives, yeah, they have the folders for anonymous works. Yeah, so therefore, the simple anonymous wouldn't work here. It has to be destroyed in a way. Yeah, it's really the anonymity itself shouldn't be. Because it works often, yeah, as some marketing ploy or something like this, yeah. But it has to be,
right. So we have had several discussions about this is not a Banksy-like prank. We're not going to shred a painting at Sotheby's and then make a lot of money. And this is not Damien Hirst with his diamond skull in London, where he's got this darkened gallery and you wait outside and then you go up. I did it. You walk around it, you look at it, you go out, and then he's taking bids, and then he ends up buying it himself. This is none of that. This has nothing to do with any of that. This is deadly serious. And one of the things we've been talking about repeatedly, including this morning, is that it looks absurd, but it's deadly serious, right? So I would now want to leave the impression with these last three gestures that this is meant to be a joke. This is actually the beginning of an experiment, which probably will fail, but what other choice do we have unless we want to continue down the path of careerism and commodifying works and gamesmanship and etc.
Branding, yeah, and so on. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's clearly it's clear for me to see this liberating gesture of this crossing out, giving it up, destroying the legacy in a way, not counting on some right to let's say reproduce or whatever. Yeah, this can come or go, but the work itself, yeah, being something that clearly has its own agency and its work and it's producing the effects and so on. It has to be liberated in this way that nothing surrounds it or encloses it. Yeah, so the interpretation can arise only from works like this. Yeah, so it's really no priority of or no datation even. Yeah, we can add this also here. Yeah, so datation could be also something to dispute here.
So one of the most powerful things about this, anonymous crossed out, is that it prevents the recuperation into capital. So the octopus squid of capital is always looking around to latch onto something and drain it of anything of any value, right? You cannot copyright anything under that name. It's impossible. Sure. So this protects you from even being tempted if you use this methodology. The addition of one, no rights, crossed out, and anonymous, crossed out. There's no chance in hell that it will ever be recuperated to capital, as far as I can make out. But yeah, again, it's an experiment.
It's an experiment. It's a noble one. It's worth a try. It's really probably the only chance to produce something worthwhile because, events, how they occur, it's really under no regulations, under no prior legislations and so on. Yeah, the more restrictions, the more conditions, the more clauses and so on you put onto them, the less chances you got to produce something that someone will arrive and so on. Yeah, so and even to be open to the future of works, then you have to give up this traditional artifacts of possession and propriety and so on. Yeah.
So to almost wrap up,
yeah,
I have to pay homage to my colleagues. This project came out of almost 5 years of work prior to the PhD with Sazu in India and elsewhere. We created a collective called Out of India because it started in India in 17 and then we took it out of India and we spent 5 years making endless submissions for every imaginable thing, publications, residencies, teaching fellowships, research fellowships, you name it. We spent 5 years testing the ecosystem with this work of not necessarily the abolition of intellectual property right, but a kind of demolition of academic arrogance and privilege. We even started with such a project, which is the image that's on the press release. If you saw the press release, it's up here if you want to see it. That is an image from 2017 when we took the school to task that we were actually employed at for trying to repress its own history, which was a beautiful moment in the 60s when the school was in this concrete badminton building designed by B.V. Doshi, and there were no tuition charges, nobody was paid to teach, and there was all one class. There were not separate classes. It was small, and there were magnificent guests coming through like Louis Kahn. But the whole apparatus of the school by 2017 had been to suppress and get rid of this history because it was neoliberalizing itself, like every university around the planet was. So I have to pay homage to those friends of mine, 4 of them, Harsh, Ishita, Owen, the three others of the Out of India collective, and close with a video, which you're welcome to wander around and hit the bar when we're playing this video. It goes on for 13 minutes. And what it is, Ishita made this in Garli, this little village in the Himalaya, where she now is living because she's checked out of academia. It's a ruined village. She made this video, which represents our 5 years investigation of what we called transmedia. Various forms of artistic and literary and scholarly interventions in that ecosystem that I referenced, that we were sounding as if, is there anybody there? Is there anybody there? This video is a montaged, beautiful evocation of those 5 years. And I will say no more, I just turned it on.
Hangi bekçi? Ben kayna kayna.